Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Raul, and today I want to talk about this car right here. This is a somewhat recent build for me, a few years old, but the story of Corvette and its humble beginnings. This is a '53 Corvette model that I built, so I'll just go over that a little bit with you guys, and the story of Corvette and some of the unique features and things that go along with this car for its very humble beginnings. I'm sure many of you guys know the story of Corvette, or at least more recent Corvettes. But I like this car. It's a neat car, and I like what the Corvette has become, especially during the muscle car heyday. But during this time, it was just an image car, and not really a performance car, but it was a sporty car. So I'll go over some of the unusual things about this car. And this is 1953, and it's the first year of the Corvette it came out, and it was a very expensive, very limited production car with some really unusual quirks and things that you wouldn't get away with today. One of the things that is kind of strange and crude, there's no door handles. There's no way to lock this door. You reach in through the inside and you grab the inside door handle to open the door. There are no windows, no roll-up windows. It has side curtains, and those just made up to the top. And it only had a soft top. And one of the biggest complaints for this car was the top leaked. It wasn't a very good system. Another thing, a lot of you may know that it's very basic. It's 1953, and Chevrolet pretty much stayed with on-the-shelf components. So there really isn't a whole lot done to the suspensions. Just frame, and it's got the inline six, which is what it had in the day. You didn't really do too much to the motor itself. If I can get the hood open. But to make it a little more exotic and a little more sporty, they added the triple carburetors. And you know, from reading about it, it really didn't seem like they did anything to the motor spec wise. It's 150 horsepower with the 3 carburetors, which I understand is only 15 horsepower above the normal 1953 engine. And there's a shot of the interior. It also only came with the Power Glide automatic, the 2-speed Power Glide automatic. Not really sure why. I read somewhere that they didn't have a manual tranny that could handle the torque of the 6-cylinder, but I don't really know how much more torque this was actually making. So that's kind of strange. But and another thing with the '53 Corvette, they only came this way. They made 300 of them. They were all hand-built, and they were hand-built in Michigan. They were working on the fiberglass body, which was pretty exotic. And so they were all hand-built in Michigan, and they were working on the production, and they knew they weren't going to make very many of them. So when they decided to market and sell this thing, you had to be somebody or know somebody to buy one. They were only marketed to VIPs and celebrities, and they had a hard time selling them even to them. There was a lot of showroom traffic, but and a lot of interest in the car, because there wasn't anything out there like this at the time. And for at the time, its performance, that 150 horsepower 6-cylinder engine, 0 to 60 in 11 seconds, blazing fast. I'm just, actually, all kidding aside, that was actually pretty respectable for 1953. Remember, Chevrolet didn't have the pushrod V8. That came out 2 more years later in 265 cube. But so in '53, this was the hot one, and this was the image car. It was marketed as a sports car, and they were trying to go after the sports car market, but missing the manual tranny, I think it really missed that mark, having the 2-speed Power Glide automatic. And another ironic thing, no options. Like I said, this car only came in polo white. All 53s had the black tops. 54s had tan tops. And all of them red interior. And all of them optioned the exact same way. It was an expensive car. $3,700 base price with 2 options. An AM radio and the heater. Those were the only two options. But to call them options is kind of ironic because, I mean, how could you call it an option when every single 53 Corvette came with those two options? So it was literally a $3,900 car. It was a lot of money in 1953. But quite a great car, and they're worth a lot more money now. But it's because of the legacy and not really what the car stands for. Just a shot of the underside here. But it's a fun car and it's an interesting car. But another thing that I like with this particular car is the knee-jerk reaction. This car gave birth to another car, and that car saved it. That to me is a story right there that I love. It gave birth to the Thunderbird. When this came out, Ford had nothing to compete against it, and they're panicked. They're like, we need something to compete against this car. We don't have anything. So their knee-jerk reaction, they built the Thunderbird, and the Thunderbird came out in '55. But some of the interesting things about it, the Thunderbird was an all-steel car. It had many options, and it came with the 292 V8. But to speed up to that time frame, when the 53s came out, they only had 300 of them. They made 301 to 315, depends on what you read and whatnot. But the general accepted number is 300 of these cars were made. So to fix some of that, they had dedicated an assembly plant in St. Louis, and they figured out the production of the fiberglass body, which was slowing them down because all the 53s were hand built. So by '54, they had figured all that out, and they had dropped, they played some games. They had dropped the list price $1,000, so now it was a $2,700 starter price on a '54 Corvette. And there's really not much different between a '53 and '54. The carburetors are a little bit different. The air cleaners are definitely different. Like I said, this one, I built it with the '53 engine. This is the Revell Monogram kit. It actually comes with both engines. But the '54 has a chrome valve cover. They updated cam a little bit so that now it's 155 horsepower, and it's got different air cleaners. But they played with the window stickers a little bit. So now in '54, the AM radio and the heater were listed as options. The white wall tires were listed as options. The turn signals were listed as an option. Windshield wipers were listed as an option. What else? There was a couple other options. Oh, the Power Glide was listed as an option even though there was no other tranny to put in the car. So while those were listed as options, every '54 came with those options. The only truth to the '54 is you now had 4 colors on the outside to choose from. You had polo white, which most of them were. Then there was a blue, a red, and a black. And I understand only 4 black cars were made. But most of them were made in white. But the '54s had a tan top. And then if you bought the blue car, you got a tan interior. But all the rest of them had red interiors. But with all the options, like the white walls, but every '54 came with the options. It was now a $3,400 car, so now it's $500 less than the '53, and it's the much more predominant car. If you look for this body style, you'll pretty much find '54s because they geared production to make 10,000 cars, and they thought that shouldn't be no problem. So when '54 started going, they ended up making 3,600 cars. It was 3,640. But the problem was by the end of the year, they had a third of them still sitting unsold. So they weren't moving. So for '55, they started, the V8 became available in '55. And they were all still Power Glide for the most part. Sometime mid-year in '55, the 3-speed manual became available. So you can find V8 3-speed manual '55s. But when production ended in '55, they only made and sold 700 cars. They decided they were going to make what they needed in a facility that was meant to do 10,000 cars a year, which they thought was a reasonable low production. So at that point, the Corvette was pretty much dying. They're like, this car, there's no market for this car. this is this isn't. But the Thunderbird came out in '55, and like I said, the Thunderbird, you had more options. It was an all steel body, so it was a little bit easier for Ford to make. It came with the 292 engine. You can get a 3-speed manual or an automatic in it. It had roll-up windows, power windows as an option, both hard and soft tops. So it had more options and it appealed to more people. And Ford, same thing. They were expecting to build 10,000 cars. Ironically, they thought that's what the market was going to bear. So they produced, they were geared for that. Well, they couldn't fill orders fast enough. And at the end of the year, Ford sold 16,000 something 55 Thunderbirds, and they were blown away. And another piece of irony between the two cars, the Corvette has cross flags on the front here. The 55 Thunderbird also had cross flags on the front and back of it. And it's the only year the Thunderbird had that. That's another thing both cars actually shared. But it was dropped after 55 on the Thunderbird. But Chevrolet saw that the Ford sold 16,000 units and they realized, wait, there is a market for this car. So it's not the market, it's us. We're doing something wrong. So in essence, this Corvette gave birth to the Thunderbird, and then the Thunderbird saved the Corvette. If that didn't happen, there's a real high possibility that Chevrolet was going to cancel this car. But they decided to continue on, and you've seen the 56, and the performance really started to come on in 57. And Zora was, I understand, hired in 55, and he started to take over the Corvette. So Zora Arkas Duntov really gave the Corvette its fangs, basically, and the car grew from there. So there's a lot of the interesting, neat things about Corvette, which the name actually came from a type of ship, I guess, that the name Corvette. So I guess it's some sort of smaller, faster ship of some kind, a smaller vessel for military, I guess. I was trying to read more on that, but it was quite an interesting story on the Corvette and its humble beginnings. But so this is my build of a 53, and then one of the other interesting statistics and facts, the Corvette, it weighed 2,900 pounds, and that's where most of its performance actually came from, because it was so light compared to any other 53 Chevrolet in the time frame. But still, 0 to 60 in 11 seconds. That's flying. But well, in 53 it actually was. So can't really knock it for, you put it in its time frame and what was going on at that time. But like I said, this is the Revell kit, and I actually like this kit. It's a little finicky to put together, but it goes together really well. It requires a lot of body work, but it goes together really well. And I like it. I built this one. I turned one into a 55. I'll show you that one at another time. I also plan to build a 54, which I'll do in blue with the beige interior. But this one is mostly out of the kit. If you notice a few things, the mesh grills, those are Model Car Garage photo etched. So is the emblem, the Corvette emblems on the side here. And then some of the other little bits and pieces, the defroster vents and the hood squirters that are right here. And I also painted this in Scale Finishes Polo White. So, and it's got the clear coat I used, the automotive clear coat. And I made a license plate that says 53 Vet. Just printed that on my printer and stuck it in there. But it's a beautiful kit. It goes together really well, other than just having a lot of mold lines and having to deal with all of that. And then making sure the headlights fit in there fairly well. But I like it. It just takes a little bit more body work than you would expect. It's been re-released a number of times. I think this kit originates in like 1977. So it goes back a bit. I'll throw some pictures of the Miscellaneous Box Arts from, I think I got four different versions of it. Because one of my earliest ones, the chrome was kind of bad. And I was thinking about getting the chrome redone. But with all the little pieces of chrome and getting it redone and the kit being out, it was easier just to pick up another kit just for the chrome. And I ended up needing it because I had a windshield that was broken. So to build 3 cars, and I had 4 kits. But so I have a parts kit of this, but it's a good kit, and I enjoyed building it, and the story and reading about it and what went into it. And also, I have a friend. He had one for a few years. He had a '54 Corvette, and I admired it, and I'm like, yeah, and I got to see it in person, but we got to sit and talk in cars, and he's had a number of other cars and muscle cars, and we've talked about that. He actually, his father-in-law also owned a AMC dealership, so he got to race one of the actual 50 AMXs when they were new. So I really liked talking to him. But he also had a '54 Corvette for a while, and that was more recently, in the past 5 years. He had one. It was fully restored, all the way back to original with the bias ply white wall tires. And we got to talking about it, and I said, "What's that like to actually own and drive?" I said, it's a great car, but what's it like to actually own and drive? Because he likes to drive his cars. And he goes, honestly, he goes, it's great for shows and attentions. He goes, even though it's a '54, his was a '54. He goes, it's great for attention and shows. He goes, you bring it to a show, it gets lots of attention. Everybody's just all over it, and he goes, it's great. He goes, but to actually drive, he goes, it's scary. It sucks. He goes, it doesn't really accelerate. Like I was talking, 0 to 60 in 11 seconds. The steering is really loose and wobbly. It's kind of just, there's really not a whole lot to it. And it was just, that way. There's no power steering, no power brakes. And the brakes aren't all that great. He said it doesn't handle very well, with not having windows or any of that stuff. He goes, it's not really all that great to drive, especially in modern traffic. He goes, and people just stare. He goes, you get a lot of stares and people not paying attention. You're worried that somebody's going to run into you. He goes, it's a 1954 Chevy when it comes to driving it. He goes, it's all slow compared to anything today, and he goes, it's a great car for getting attention, but as far as driving it around, he goes, yeah. He goes, it's kind of scary. But he enjoyed it for a little while, and then he ended up selling it and moving on to something else. But still, it was great to see, great to experience. I wanted to ride in it, but I never got that opportunity. But I just wanted to share that with you and share the story of this car, and ramble on a little bit too much, because there's a lot to read and a lot of interesting trivia that goes into some of these early Corvettes, and some of the stories that are out there, that how some of these intertwine and affect each other. But I enjoyed building this model. I got a '54 that I'm going to build, and I'll show you the '55 when I pull that one out. But I just wanted to say thank you for subscribing. Thanks for letting me ramble on, and I appreciate you guys enjoying my models and what I'm bringing to the channel. So thank you very much, you guys, and you have a good day.